today she'll be giving us the keys to de-escalating conflict in text. So to give you a little bit of Andrea's background, she's an experienced community organizer who spent the last 9 years directing and facilitating the growth of healthy WordPress communities via volunteer-organized face-to-face events. She trains, empowers, and advises leaders in WordPress open source project contributor programs. And without further ado, Andrea, take it away.
Thank you, Sophie. All right. Come with me, friends. We're going to share my screen and get into it. All right. How are we looking? We all good? Okay. Fantastic. All right, my friends, welcome to this workshop, and thank you for joining me today to talk about conflict and de-escalation. And I'll just start out by saying, I know for a lot of people, including me, conflict can be scary or draining or upsetting, but I hope that this workshop will leave you feeling energized and optimistic and confident about how to respond to conflict when it inevitably crops up in your community. I like to start with disclaimers, and I set this one up real well. The title of this talk has 5 words I hope you will never use in conflict except to yourself. All right? Telling someone else to calm down is a surefire way to make things worse and not better. So, inside voice only for those first 5 words. All right? And just a few housekeeping notes. I'm not keeping a close eye on chat, but Sophie is going to keep an eye on it, and I trust you all to communicate responsibly in there. I usually relish taking questions in the moment, but for this material, I struggle with presenting it all in the time allotted. So I'm going to try to be laser focused and then take as many questions as I can at the end. All right, let's go. Oh, and one more thing. The script for this talk and a full bibliography is available on my website, on my blog. And so I'm going to link out to that at the very end as well. So don't worry if you're taking notes too slow or something like that. It's all written down for you. All right. So this content arises from my 9 years of experience working in the WordPress open source project. And in that project, leaders are required to have complex and sometimes acrimonious conversations in public, in a place where those conversations will be immortalized for presumably forever or for as long as the archive lasts. And I should make it clear, in WordPress, in open source, conflict or differences of opinion are important tools that we rely on to help us make great software, which, in the case of WordPress, runs a little bit more than 30% of the internet, technically 35 or so. So if we're going to build a platform that meets a broad scale of needs, we have to synthesize a lot of different, very passionate opinions. So this talk isn't about eradicating conflict, but rather how to keep it productive by de-escalating it. And there's a lot we could discuss about how to manage conflict in a large public organization. But for today, I just want to share some rubrics and some tools that can help you respond more effectively when disagreeing in a highly visible sphere. All right, so first off, we're going to talk about the base unit of conflict, which is the argument. Here's what makes an argument. And this happens to you too, all of you, when you're engaged in an argument, which is different from a debate. All right, so when an argument starts, we have a triggering event, and then next we have the perception of a threat. Now that word is bolded for a reason. It doesn't have to be a real threat, right? You just have to have someone detect a threat, whether it's real or not. And then that threat results in defensive anger, which then results in acting out. So again, perception, thought, feeling, anger, action, behavior, acting out. That acting out turns into a new triggering event, which then shows up as a perception of threat on the other side, and then repeat as necessary, back and forth, back and forth. Okay, so that's just our basic understanding of what makes an argument. But of course, not all arguments or conflicts are created equal. Some are very severe, some are less so. So it's helpful to identify what makes conflicts more or less intense and some of the ways they can rise and fall in intensity. Similar to hurricane scales, we can identify 5 categories of conflicts. The first conflict level, the lowest, is difference. In this case, 2 parties disagree on an issue, but feel no discomfort about that disagreement, right? This typically shows up in like sports rivalries, food preferences, TV show preferences. I love white chocolate. I think white chocolate is gross, but we're still friends, that kind of thing, all right? The relationship is secure, but you just like different things. Next, a little bit more intense, is conflict level 2, misunderstanding. In a misunderstanding, one party understands something that the other party does not. Okay? This usually results from miscommunication or lack of transparency. Sometimes rumors can result in misunderstandings. Can cause misunderstandings or misconceptions, like just a different idea of what's going on from other people. Can call the terms of the relationship between the 2 people into question, depending on the severity of the misunderstanding or how important the topic is for one or both parties. Higher intensity than this is conflict level 3, disagreement. In this case, 2 parties see something differently, regardless of how well they understand the other's position, right? So there's no misunderstanding here. I understand that you think something and I think something else. They don't match. We understand each other's ideas or beliefs very, very clearly. But why is this different from differences? Well, it's because in disagreement, there is discomfort in the fact that the other party disagrees. All right. So that discomfort can come from lots of different places. It can come from a cultural low tolerance for conflict. It can come from a big delta in the level of power or privilege between the 2 conflict partners. It can come from a lot of different places, but it can result in one or both parties wanting to reassess the future of the relationship, whether they're going to stay in the same relationship or not. Okay. And when I say relationship, I mean, obviously this could be romantic relationship, but mostly what I'm talking about is community manager to community member, team member to team member, boss to employee, friend to friend, etc. Right? So any 2 people that have some kind of interaction have some level of a relationship, and that's what I'm talking about here. All right, let's get a little bit more intense, friends. Farther up the scale than disagreement, discord. Now, discord generally results from one party identifying a pattern or a trend of disagreement after disagreement. Okay. In this case, we have difficulties in the relationship of the 2 parties, even outside of the original conflict. So in this case, we have one or both parties identifying like, this person hates all of my ideas, or every time I show up with a suggestion, they reject it. No matter what I do, they don't like me, or I don't belong here, or something like that. And when you know you've hit discord is when you are having a conversation that everyone would normally expect to be quite peaceful, but it is tense, or it turns into an argument unexpectedly because the trend or the pattern or the kind of accumulation of disagreements is sneaking out of the topic itself. All right. Discord is definitely in the orange or red zone. When we are at this level of conflict, the relationship is strained and might not fully recover or might not be able to be recovered. If it isn't recovered, it might work its way all the way up into polarization. Now, polarization is when the 2 parties' relationship is actively hostile or estranged. Signs of polarization might include a refusal to engage in constructive behaviors like reaching out or taking perspective, creating solutions. And a really good marker of polarization is a high volume of effort committed to defending a certain position or making a case. All right. When someone is just like harping on this one thing nonstop, and they're putting a lot of time into it. All right. You can also see polarization show up. One of the clues can be behavior that looks like recruitment or insisting that people take sides on a certain issue or in a group. Okay. In polarization, we have severely negative emotions and pretty negative behavior with little or no help or hope for reconciliation because there's no interest in it. In polarization, one or both parties has kind of given up and is now fighting, like for good, for keeps, right? All right, so here are those conflict levels again in order: lower, higher, and we understand, right, that conflict can move up and down these levels, escalating and de-escalating over time. And our job as leaders in this space is not to remove all conflict. This is a bit of a leap that sometimes people have trouble coming with me on. But in this framework, conflict is a valuable tool that I'm encouraging you to engage with. It helps us make better decisions that benefit more people. Diverse communities have conflict. It's just the way it works because you have lots of different perspectives trying to come together into a synthesized whole, right? It does serve us as community managers and as leaders in a community not to throw out conflict, but to prevent conflict from escalating to the point that it breaks the relationships that we need to collaborate. Right? So it's not about getting rid of it. It's about keeping it at a manageable level. Basically, we want to keep all conflict down in that like levels 1 and 2, differences and misunderstandings. We can edge into 3 sometimes, but we can't stay in 3 for a long period of time because that just keeps going. All right. So let's talk about how we can move up and down that scale. Come along. Okay, here are some escalating factors. If you want to make an argument worse, this is the way to do it, my friends. Or if you start noticing things showing up here, it's possible that you have started to identify things that escalate a conflict or a disagreement, right? So making it personal. You can observe this all the time on social media if you try. Phrases like, you're the kind of person who does this thing. Well, if you have low standards, or, oh, that group, they're all garbage, et cetera, right? Making it personal converts a difference of opinion into an attack. Don't do it, and don't fall for it, all right? Keep an eye out for it, and don't hook into that. Keep yourself apart from that. All right, another escalating factor, the classic, noticing the trend. If you start to think that someone's never, ever going to agree with you, it changes your understanding of that relationship. And when differences mount up, you start to wonder whether you have anything in common with someone at all, or if you belong in this group at all, right? So that trend of disagreements can really escalate things. Another important escalating factor is a sense of comfort in the conversation. Discomfort with the other's conflicting opinion, especially if the person has more positional authority, i.e. is higher up in a hierarchy, will escalate any disagreement. This is why leaders and other kinds of community-focused people spend so much time building and fostering positive relationships. That lack of psychological safety that results in discomfort or distrust can take a simple disagreement all the way up into, or simple difference all the way up into disagreement or even discord really fast, faster than you would generally anticipate. All right, so that psychological safety is a really important thing. The more uncomfortable people are with disagreeing with you, the more unpredictable their responses will be. Another one that you really got to keep an eye out for is level of perceived risk or serious consequences associated with the issue. When the stakes are high, emotions run high as well. You're much more likely to have a knockdown, drag-out fight over losing your house rather than losing your pen, right? So when you're planning or when you end up talking about highly consequential topics, you have to plan carefully. Bring a strategic approach. Bring all of your de-escalating factors with you. Because if someone has a high perceived risk or serious consequences that are going to come out, depending on the way this issue is defined, they are hard to bring with you. All right, and then an interesting one that shows up on the internet a lot that I haven't seen a ton of research on yet, but a quick back and forth or rapid pace of interaction tends to be a problem. And of course, sometimes it's necessary to respond quickly to a complaint, but not in a volley of, well, you're wrong, well, you're wrong, well, you're wrong, right? And also keep in mind that your level of alarm and urgency when considering your response to a conflict doesn't necessarily match the urgency that onlookers have. So when in doubt, almost every time, when you can, go slow. Slow it down. The faster you go, the more those fight hormones just start repeating and multiplying. Okay. So that's a lot of ways that things can get real bad. Okay. Let's talk about our list of ways to bring things down. First, super, super important, identifying that common ground, right? You can shore up a relationship a lot by refocusing on the things that unite you. If you're part of the same community, something brought you together, right? So by pulling that foundational agreement, that agreement that brought you together into focus, you make peace a lot more attainable. Okay, so find that common ground and work from there. Next, focusing on the issue. This is the antidote to making it personal, right? When we make it very clear in a discussion or a disagreement or a difference that everyone involved is a good person who still belongs here, and that is assuming they are, right? This isn't talking about abuse situations. This is talking about disagreements, even discord. When we're clear that everyone here belongs and is good, no matter what the outcome of the discussion, then we can navigate away from rage and hurtful words that people have a hard time taking back. And then similar to keeping the focus on the issues, this helps us avoid talking about positions, but instead makes clear how your perspective is informed by your interest. This can be another really powerful way to find common ground. We frequently share the same interests, even when we find ourselves in different positions on an issue. Sometimes we're all super committed to user privacy, but we have a difference of opinion about the prioritization of one user's need for privacy versus another, for example, right? But when you can focus on what you are interested in rather than people's opposing positions, you can bring people closer together. And then of course, shifting your approach to conflict, embracing those differences of opinions or styles or experiences. This is an important leadership opportunity in a community space. By consistently highlighting what differences are welcome in your space and where, you create the psychological safety in your group that allows people to tolerate multiple instances of differences, right? If you have a community that embraces these differences, then you are going to be able to mount up a few extra differences for each person. This activity, plus consistently coming back to your community's common ground, will help your conflict stay manageable and even friendly, which is really where we all want to be, right? And then another super, super important one, this is the second to last, I promise, making the effort to understand all sides. All right. And then, it's easier than it sounds, right? Or it's harder than it sounds. Doing the work of understanding your conflict partner's perspective with courage and empathy and compassion. Okay. Doing that work to see it from their side. And then finally, that antidote to that quick back and forth. Whatever you can do to make it possible for the conversation to slow down and allow you and other people's good sense to catch up with their mouths or their fingers or their thumbs. This will help reduce the severity of the conflict. And I hear you all thinking, do you know how fast my people can type, Andrea? Or even, good luck trying that on Twitter, lady. So here's my tip, right? A bookmarking response of like, hi, oh, okay, hey, I see, we care about this. Excellent, passionate opinions. You have my attention. And now I'm going to ask you to bear with me while I go find some answers and bring them back. Right? That bookmarking response of like, hey, I am alerted, I am aware, I'm coming back with some answers, but for right now, just to let you know, you don't need to shout louder. And until you have some data, maybe we don't need to keep discussing. I wouldn't actually shush people, but letting people know like, okay, I'm working on it. Message delivered. It's a really good way to keep the conversation from kind of spiraling out of control while you're slowing it down. And that way people can come back with kind of cooler heads, right? You're just really buying people a little time to be like, whoa, what happened? I got real passionate there for a second. But like I acknowledge like that good luck on Twitter, lady, that thought is a very, very apt thought, right? Communication environments do affect your ability to de-escalate a conflict. So let's make explicit where and in what environment you can more easily de-escalate. So this is my little rubric. As you can see, your ability to de-escalate depends on the severity of the conflict, but also where the conflict is happening. Because when somebody like publicly states their opinion that on a certain topic, it's much harder for them to walk that back or change that position if they've already broadcast it, right? So the more privacy there is in communication, usually that allows for more flexibility. That said, my friends, any text-based discussion is not private on the internet, okay? Please do not think that just because it's a private message that it is private. Anything you write down and send to someone in your community, with very few exceptions, should be something that you're okay to have screen capped or copied and pasted onto a news site. All right, get good at contextual language and use it. And then also, as you can see, the best place to de-escalate is before we start talking or before it goes public. So if you know that something is going to be controversial or conflict causing, do what you can to get in front of it, right? Make a strategy, do a little pre-communicating with influential stakeholders. But we're not going to talk about prevention today because that's like a whole extra hour, right? Today, we're going to talk about responding. So now I'd like to go through, I have a little 5-step formula for responding to conflict in a thoughtful and effective way. Come along with me. All right. I like a checklist, especially when my emotions are running hot. So here's mine. Compose yourself, analyze and empathize, contextualize, strategize, and mobilize. We're going to go through them one by one. First thing, you're in a conflict, stop, take stock of your emotional reaction. If you're not sure how you're feeling, you just are like, it's a lot though. Pay attention to the sensations, your physical sensations, and find out, ask yourself some questions. What am I feeling in my body? Where am I feeling it? Do I feel a pressure in my chest? Is my face hot? And then go into, what am I thinking? What are my thoughts going on? And if you're not calm, and you're probably not, ask yourself, how can I best calm down? Now, the ability to calm yourself or soothe yourself is highly individualized, right? I can't tell you exactly how to calm yourself down, but if you're working in a community space, if you don't know how to do that yet, learn it immediately, all right? And it takes a little practice. Here are some reminders that help me in order to see if they help you as well. I frequently remind myself, you know what, Andrea? Feedback is a lot better than indifference. A lot of people have trouble getting people to care about their stuff. Look at you. You have unlimited opinions about the things you care about as well. Lucky girl. Also, lack of dissent equals monoculture, which equals obsolescence. So, cherishing that dissent. Also, I remind myself frequently, you don't have to win this argument. It's not about winning. It's about understanding the other party. And then if you are a survivor of trauma, it can be very, very important to remind yourself, because when you hit that fight or flight response, it's very easy to go back into a trauma memory, right? So remind yourself you're not in danger. These are words on a screen. Hopefully they are not abusive words. If they're not abusive words, you're not in danger and you are safe. Okay? All right. Next step is to analyze the situation and empathize with your conflict partner. I know this seems counterintuitive, but the more you understand about a situation, the more powerful you are. So you need to understand what's happening so that you can make a targeted response, and therefore you have to ask yourself some questions. This is you activating your curiosity, which also helps you compose yourself, right? You're firing up that logical, higher kind of brain function work, right? Activating your logic brain. And that curiosity is one of the most important ways to de-escalate both yourself and a situation itself, okay? So, some questions you could ask yourself. What is this person's goal? Like, what are they really trying to accomplish here? What are they trying to do? And then also, why did they take the time to write this? What emotion is fueling them? Where are they coming from? What's their perspective? Here's a good one. What do I have in common with this person? What do we both agree on, even in the space of disagreeing, right? See how we're starting to sneak up on that common ground? An even more challenging question. What do I admire about this person? What do I cherish about them? And then one of the hardest questions to ask, but a really good one to shift your perspective. What is my part in this? How could I possibly be contributing to this conflict? How am I complicit in this situation? All right, so ask yourself some rough questions, but they really kind of get into the meat of what's happening. All right, I want to just call out, you haven't said anything yet. This is all happening inside of you, right? And so next, let's contextualize. So once you have activated your curiosity, you're calmer, then ask yourself some questions about the context of this disagreement. Who is affected by this conflict? And who agrees with this person? How widespread in your community is this opinion or this conflict? Is it one person with an axe to grind? Is it half your community, right? The answers to that will affect what you do next. What's the root cause of this disagreement? Is there a root cause that's deeper than this situation? And then finally, what is my relationship with this person? And based on my relationship, what's my ability to de-escalate? Remember how we talked about like perceiving patterns? If you've had to deliver up 3 no's in a row to this community member, and now they're saying, we have to be able to do this thing. And you're like, oh, you definitely don't. But now what, right? Maybe you're not the right person to de-escalate. Maybe somebody else needs to step in, all right? Which brings us to our next step, strategize. My friends, before you respond to conflict, please identify what you want to have happen as a result of your intervention. Okay. Identify your desired outcome. What do you want to happen that isn't happening right now? Okay. And ask yourself, is it necessary to respond at all? Will a response make anything better? If the only thing that you responding will make better is your baby feelings, it might not be time. it might not be a time that you need to intervene, right? So ask yourself, will a response make things better and bring us closer to my desired outcome or to my team's desired outcome? If it is necessary to respond, who should respond, right? Again, should it be you? Especially if you served up like five no's just last week, or should it be somebody else? Is there anyone? Should you activate a group? Should you have multiple people weighing in and offering different perspectives? Okay. And then finally, before you execute anything, stop, think it through, and think about, what are the risks associated with this response? Okay. How could this go wrong? And then, how can I mitigate those risks? All right. So think about, okay, we are going to have this person say this, and then this person is going to weigh in, and then think a couple steps ahead and be like, oh, okay, no, but then that thing. So let's get ahead of that too, right? Start planning out your moves. All right. And then finally, it's time. You're calm. You know what the landscape is. You have a strategy. Mobilize. If you need more than one person or to send someone else other than you in, recruit that person, give them the analysis in your strategy, your desired outcome, and draft a response that reflects that strategy. Okay. If you're having trouble with the draft, if you're typing and typing and typing, and you're like, oh, no, it's wrong. And then you type some more and, oh, it's wrong. You're probably not calm. I'm going to tell you, my friends, you're probably not calm. So at that point, it's real good to get somebody else to look at it for you. So you can just throw all of your thoughts into a page, and then you can delete a lot of stuff before you say anything out in public, right? That's one of the nice things about text-based communications. You can draft it. It's really nice. So think it through, and if you're having trouble, if it's just coming hard or it's not sitting well with you, get someone to give you some feedback on it. All right. And repeat. Just keep doing it over and over and over again until you get down into that misunderstanding, identify the misunderstanding, or get into that place of like, we disagree, but we're all still in it to win it, right? Okay. We did that in about half an hour. We're doing it. All right. Now, rapid fire tips. Friends, let's go. All right. First up, and there are like 11-ish of these, just to let you know. And then I'm going to take questions. All right. Don't lie or fake it. You will be tempted to, if you did something that wasn't good and you're getting called out about it, you're going to be tempted to cover your butts. All right. It wastes your time. Lying or misrepresenting the facts damages your credibility, and the risks outweigh the rewards. So be honest. If it's private information, if there is private or sensitive information that you can't share, then you can say that. All right. But transparency is really one of your best go-tos. If you screwed it up, admit to it, make amends, and establish how not to screw it up again. All right. Do intervene in a discussion when civility, fairness, or safety are threatened, or when a relevant fact is misstated. Now, it's important that you recognize, and if you're in here with me, you probably know, but I'm just going to underline it. Whatever levels of civility you tolerate in your community, that becomes your new behavioral norm. I'm going to say it again. If you tolerate people being rude and mean to each other without intervening, then you're saying, that's cool. That's how we act in here. Okay? So, if someone gets mean or rude or starts saying things that threaten people's safety or fairness, you got to get in there because those people are trying to overwrite your community rules, and that's not okay. All right. Now, I will say, often it is very tempting to correct an irrelevant fact because smartness is frequently correlated with rightness. Okay. Don't correct a fact that isn't relevant. If they made a mistake and it doesn't actually matter to the topic at hand, let it go. You don't have to be Mr. or Ms. always right all the time. Andrea, just remember that. I really like being right, but it doesn't pay off like I always hope it will. All right, next one. Avoid you statements. And I'm actually going to extend this a little bit and encourage you to avoid we statements if you can. Get the pronouns out of there. Do your best to state facts. All right. And definitely, but the thing about the you statements that is particularly dangerous is it's telling people what they think and feel. And that is incredibly invasive and unfair. And it doesn't build understanding, right? And so instead of defining what someone's saying, check for understanding or make factual statements. All right. This is a really, really important one. 99.90 million% of the time, your true goal is not to win. Your true goal is to understand the other person's perspective. Proving them wrong does not get you anything long-lasting. It actually doesn't necessarily change their minds. So don't try to win. Work on understanding better and helping them understand you. All right, this is just a visual tip because a lot of us use technology and this shorthand helps me. I think of myself when I'm looking for common ground, I imagine myself zooming out, right? I zoom out or I back up and sometimes I will physically like, all right, I need more field of vision here, right? Zoom out from the situation to find that common ground that you share with the other person. I guarantee you, with the exception of a very few handful of people, every single person that you are possibly disagreeing with is on this planet. There you go, common ground. They're all human beings. Good start. Therefore, they depend on oxygen. Great, we're rolling now, right? Sometimes you have to get that basic and then build from that space. Use your imagination. Figure out ways that you can find ways that you are the same, and that kind of eases those differences. All right, next up, y'all, just be nice for no reason. You don't need a reason. Be nice to people. It makes everything better. The return on that investment on just like willful, unreasoned niceness comes back to you time after time after time, years later. Every single chance. Prioritize kindness over correctness every chance you get. Okay, tactic. See if you can limit the length of your response. All right, this is how Twitter becomes a masterclass in text-based interaction, right? Try to limit the length of your response, your comment response, if you're talking in text, to maximum twice the length of the other party's comment. It's just an easy rule of thumb. And you can kind of eyeball it, right? You're like, okay, they did that much, so I can't do more. They did that much, so I can't do more than this much, you know? And then you're typing, and you're like, oh, nope. Drowning people in information frequently comes across as condescending or aggressive. You have no ability to control your tone in text. So actual volume of words sometimes steps in for volume of voice or tone in general. So don't drown people in words. And don't drown them in questions. You do want to understand what they mean. Your instincts are good, but in text interactions, especially when they're asynchronous conversations, right? Forum posts, track tickets, GitHub, stuff like that. You only really get 1 or 2 chances at asking lots of questions before you come across as either interrogating somebody or setting a trap, right? It can be really tempting to just pepper someone with questions. What do you mean by this? Have you thought about this issue? I don't know if you know that. And this thing over here. But it comes across as pretty aggressive. So if you're going to ask for information, just like in human relationships in general, if you're asking for something, give something, right? You got to balance those things out. If you're going to withdraw some information, you have to deposit some information. Share and invite sharing from both parties. Otherwise, if it's just questions nonstop, people shut off. And then finally, if you can have a direct conversation with someone, see about video. In person doesn't happen anymore, so that's a problem. But use active listening when you get close to somebody. If you are in a position of low privilege, I encourage you to speak up. And if you are in a position of high privilege, and if you are a leader, you are in a position of privilege, then it is your responsibility to listen up. Listen to those who aren't in your position of authority. Okay? All right. And that, my friends, we got through it in 40 minutes. We now have time for questions. And I will leave that thing up. And let me see if I have any listed questions. I do. Oh, and there are so many. Okay. I am going to start with Mike. Hi, Mike. Mike is part of the WordPress community, so we have chatted in the past. All right, so Mike shares. I don't know if this is the way to do it, but I'm going to read it aloud. Mike asks, what about the case of a crowdfunding platform? He sees backers who are upset with the lack of communication from the project creator, but they take it out on the forums of the platform. How would it be best for the platform to respond? The platform itself. Okay. I mean, obviously, it depends on the ground rules of the platform. I hope that the platform has set expectations of how people should be interacting. And in an ideal world, there are moderators who are keeping an eye on how people are interacting in their platform space. I generally, if I were a community manager on that platform, my recommendation would be to intervene when we hit abusive behavior, or at the very least, come in there with highly escalated conflict or highly escalating communication, encouraging people. We're just reminding people, a lot of stuff we do in WordPress is like, hey, okay, all of these things are written by human beings and words hurt. So let's remember to express ourselves respectfully and kindly. And then we can kind of move forward from there. And then hopefully, again, you have some kind of code of conduct in the space, and you can refer people to that question. All right. My session Q&A left, or my session chat left. All right. I'm sticking in the Q&A unless somebody tells me not to. All right. I'm moving down to the next question. Oh, look, there are little thumbs ups here so I can prioritize them. I was just doing them chronologically. Hey, all right. Well, we have Kate. Hi, Kate. Asking how you navigate shutting down members with entitlement to the space or process. What if a member with a lot of social capital is part of the problem? In the case of one of our people that we count on as allies or somebody with more privilege or more sway in a space is making the situation worse, I advocate a private intervention, reaching out to that person and asking them a few questions. I like to start with a, hey, hey, we're all friends here. Super happy that you're part of our community, even if maybe at this precise moment I'm irritated with them. But just like, hey, we're so glad you're here and participating. Your participation really supports a lot of people, and I really value the time you take. Just out of curiosity, what is your goal in what you're doing over here? Like, what are you trying to accomplish? And then if they can verbalize that to me, then I move over into, okay, so I think that's a great goal. Or if it's, my goal is to pulverize this person, I point out that we don't really pulverize people here. So please don't pulverize over here. And then I will try to point out to them like, hey, here's where I see you getting in the way of your own goal. When you interact with people in this way, it does bad things to people and it makes them less likely to agree with you, for example. So that can help. And then I model some of the ways that I think they could interact while moving toward this goal that could be more effective for them and everybody else. So, and then if they need it, I offer some coaching or some help like editing responses, or we'll actually do like okay, you write out what you want to say and I'm going to give you some feedback on it. And then I'll like wordsmith it a little bit and I'll be like, here you go. See how this is a little bit less aggressive and how this welcomes people in and stuff like that. So that is generally what I will do. All right. I see there's also an option to answer live. So I'm going to try to do that with tacos. Wow, I have a lot of friends in this session, y'all. I would have been more nervous if I knew that so many people that I know are watching me. So I am going to respond to tacos next. What happens if I click this answer live button? Oh no, it goes away. Dang it. Okay, I screwed that one up. Taco, and I don't remember there it is. Taco asks, if the escalation happened in an open platform that allows everyone to jump into the conflict, doesn't slowing down open you up to more random people further escalating the situation? Sometimes it does. And that's one of the things that is just par for the course in open communities. You have you have a huge snowball risk when it comes to responding to conflict. And you just got to roll with it. Sometimes you have to remind people in your bookmarking response, like, I'm going to come back with some information. Meanwhile, I'm going to remind people of how we like to discuss things here, right? And then help people kind of elevate the tone of the conversation to the point that you want it to be. And sometimes you will get a lot of uneducated or ill-informed responses that don't help. But if you have a fairly peaceful community, generally other community members will come in and help you moderate some of that as well. So, and let's see. I'm going to go over to Thomas's question now. 4 thumbs up. Thomas, you really hit a nerve here. How to handle rants, sometimes even based on untrue statement from one, always the same person in an otherwise friendly and topic-based community. Software product and people are technical support of our resellers. You got a hot-tempered person whose comments influence the mood and attitude of the group. They do. And emotions and personal opinions frequently show up rather than sticking to the facts or looking for a solution. Thomas, you have something close to polarization here. Yeah, that is a tough situation. There are a number of ways to handle this or to approach it, right? I should make it super abundantly clear, though, like all of the tools I'm giving you in this session help you show up in a way that you are proud of. They help you show up to a conflict in a way that your employer or your community can be proud of. They don't solve other people's stuff, right? You are not in control of what other people do in a conflict. All you can do is control yourself and your own response. Now, that's very powerful. I'm not telling you you're powerless. You are incredibly powerful if you are working from a stable and confident and strategic approach. But nothing in this session teaches you how to overwrite someone's brain, because that doesn't exist. And it's also incredibly unethical. So when you have somebody who's really bringing the whole group down, there's a couple of ways to approach it depending on the organization. You can go straight to them and be like, hey, this harms the group and what we're trying to do in the group. So how can we help you get what you need while also help the group get what it needs? You can go to their employer if there's some kind of financial relationship. If there's the support staff of their resellers, can reach out to the reseller and be like, hi, so your person here has got some feelings. Can you help them use a style of communication that helps us achieve our community's goals a little bit better? Because right now, this stuff is problematic. And then you can also, and frequently if they are misstating relevant facts, you got to go in there and be like, I hear that you're upset. I hear that this is something that you feel very passionately about. I get that. And this is not accurate. So, because if you've got forums, like tons of people are reading that, right? So you can't just let untrue things that are relevant just stand, right? You gotta come in and gently, respectfully, and kindly increase understanding of anyone who shows up here by getting those facts straight. I hope that helps. I'm happy to move into a networking room or something if anybody wants to keep talking about specific situations. All right. We've got like 6 minutes left. Let's see how many more we can answer. Medet shares, if you're a position of power, as in the brand, talking to a representative, how can you enforce a rule while keeping a friendly attitude? Very similar to what I was just saying. If you have a fairly clearly established what kind of community, what kind of tone and conversation and style you're looking for in your community interactions, you can, in a very friendly way, say, hey, I'm sure there are lots of reasons that you expressed yourself in this way. And here, if you are committed to this community in the way that I think you are, and I can really tell you care a lot, here's how I'm going to ask you to behave moving forward. Because this is what happens if you keep doing the thing you're doing, right? And bring them with you, right? Their success is your success. Their success is the brand success is their success too, right? So bringing them along. I hope that helps. I'm doing very rapid fire responses here. All right. Parmveer asks, as a follow-up to Kate's question, do I have any tips for creating an environment that encourages people who do not see themselves as being in a position of power to speak up when they're uncomfortable? Oh, I have a lot of thoughts about this. Okay. If someone is uncomfortable because of something they've been told outside of your community that tells them that they don't have a right to use their voice, then that's one thing. If something inside your community is telling them that they don't have a right to use their voice, that's very different. Okay. So don't gaslight people. If it is not safe for them to speak up, don't encourage them to do so. First, make it safe for them to speak up and then encourage them to do so. If it is safe for them to speak up and they're bringing understanding of unsafe environments into your safe environment, then creating an environment that encourages inclusive and that is inclusive and where everyone's opinion is valid. Some tactics work better than others, but in general, an overt message that like, this is a place where it's safe to say these things. And generally, again, it's a code of conduct. And here are some descriptions of things that we don't allow, right? That generally shows people what they are and aren't signing up for when they engage in the community. Overtly saying, hey, we really, really value perspectives that are underrepresented in this group. So if you have a perspective that you think is a little bit different, we encourage you to share it with people, right? So a lot for anyone to believe you. So you'll repeat it about 25 times before anyone like glimmers up. It's like, okay, well, maybe me. And then privately encouraging people to weigh in and just say, hey, I know you have thoughts about this. If you know them, I want to really encourage you to share your perspective, something like that. And generally a combination of those things can be really, really effective. And then finally, Jessica asks, with regards to transparency, is it okay to say that you're offended to the person involved, or just keep it to yourself and let it cool down until you forget it, just to avoid conflict? This goes to identifying your desired outcome. If your desired outcome is to tell that person this kind of comment isn't welcome in this space because it is racist or sexist or it in some other way disenfranchises someone, then yeah, tell them. But don't tell them you're offended. Tell them this comment is offensive and doesn't match our community standards. Blah. But and it really depends on what your duty of care is in the responsibility. If you have a leadership position or if you're in a peer-to-peer relationship, it could be important for you to clearly establish community norms like that. If it's really about making your voice heard, that's also very valid, but ask yourself, I encourage you to ask yourself the question, think through the ways it could go wrong and ways you could mitigate those risks, and then see what you feel like is the best choice for you at that time, right? I hope that was clear. I can get into it a little bit more later if we want to go into another room. Okay, final minute. Amy asks, when someone is escalated, especially if they're frustrated with something you are responsible for but might not be able to resolve, what are the productive ways to acknowledge responsibility but keep it productive? Acknowledge that their perspective is valid. Let them know that unfortunately at this point they may not be able to win. They may not be able to get what they want, and ask them what you can do to help them in any other way that you have power over. Those are my quick rapid fire tips.